So you can do it in football also. Friday night football, freshman football, you can do one day earlier. JV football, you can do one day later. You can set it up however your schedule works. So for boys freshman basketball, I got same day. I got it 3 hours before. So it'll take that 7:30 start time. It'll back up 3 hours, and it'll automatically set the time. And I do it on the same site. And then I added boys JV basketball. Same thing. Same day, 1.5 hours before, same site. So the nice thing is now, when I put in my varsity schedule, it'll automatically load freshman and JV. One of the nice pieces is when I put in the freshman schedule, when I put in the varsity schedule, it will, and I hit save, it'll ask, do you want to smart schedule freshman and JV? So if it's a game where it's a triple header, you hit yes, you're good. If it might be a tournament on the weekend that doesn't have JV and freshman, you hit no, and they're not there. So it's a real easy tool to use.
So push those times ahead for those freshman JV games?
Yeah, you can, when
you have 7:30 varsity game?
Whatever you set your varsity time as, it's going to ask you how many minutes before. Now you could do it the other way. You could set up your smart scheduler in freshman, and then use your freshman team, set up smart scheduler, and say JV is going to be 90 minutes after, varsity is going to be 3 hours after. It's really whatever works for you. I do it by setting it up through varsity because everything seems to trickle down from varsity, where a freshman can be anywhere at any time. So that's whatever might work for you. But nonetheless, you can do this in just about any sport where JV and freshmen are connected to varsity. You can even do it a step further. For us within the GMC, boys and girls soccer, for at least league games, are on the same night, opposite site. So I was able, within boys soccer, I added a new smart scheduler piece where I added girls varsity soccer, same day, same time, opposite site. So again, I can enter, 1632. I can enter 64 basketball games by only entering 16 entries. That's pretty cool tool, okay? So that's smart scheduling. Any questions with that? There's other pieces. I'll be honest, I haven't used them yet, so I wrote on how to use them. But once they have the student load working with how we're going to do the reporting with the state, there's a roster tab here. There's also, if you choose to use this for game workers, this is a tab where you're able to do that. I just haven't used those yet, so I don't want to embarrass myself by trying to act like I do. So ultimately, you're going to go through all of your teams and set up those defaults. And again, the main reason why you want to get those defaults set up is because of the aspects. Number one, it'll save you time with entering the game, but probably the biggest importance of it deals with the assigner. If you don't set up your assigner as a default, then you're going to have to go back into every individual game and attach your assigner to it. Because if you are using an assigner, and this is where the assigners have been getting upset with ADs. Most of the assigners have been using Arbiter for up to 10 years. Most have definitely been using it the last 2 or 3 years. They've loved it because of the aspects. I'm sure you use Schedule Star, you print your schedule, you send it to them, and then they deal with Arbiter. They put the schedules in, they put the assignments in, they didn't worry about it. Well, now the assigners are getting somewhat frustrated because they're waiting on ADs to get the schedules in. They're counting on the ADs to get the schedules in right, which doesn't happen all the time. So the assigners are dealing with more headaches. But bottom line is, if you have not put in the assigner attached to your team and you enter a game, that assigner won't see the game. So let it be a Friday night, 7:30, and you don't have officials because you forgot to link it to it, and your assigner didn't call you saying, hey, I haven't seen that game. So that's the importance of getting those defaults set up properly. Any questions with that? Okay. The third component that you really want to spend some time setting up in advance is your opponents. This is just anybody that you're going to play. I can tell you probably 95% of the schools in America are in this database, okay? And there's probably a lot that are already in your in your pool. You can add as many as you want. You can take out as many as you want. You certainly know this, probably, I think we're all the same. We play the same people for the most part throughout the year in every sport, so we know the majority of people we can get in there. Basically, if you need to add an opponent, there's the green tab in the upper right-hand corner. And again, everything is being geared around your home site zip code. So if you look at the very top, to the right of where it says subscribe to opponents, it's going to, in this case, look for schools within 10 miles of 45069. Now, you can expand that search up to 100 miles. So if I'm looking for schools within a 100-mile radius of Lakota West, then I just simply have to go down and put in a school name, okay? Oh, fighting on, sorry. And it pulls up the school. And then if I want to make them part of my database, I simply check the box. Okay? Now, if you're playing out of state, our girls volleyball team is playing a tournament down in I think it's somewhere in the Lexington area. What I had to do, I had to look up the Lexington zip code. I put in the Lexington zip code and I did 50 miles around Lexington, and then filtered by name, found the school, clicked it, made it part of my sites, made it part of my opponents. It was easy. So that's the nice part. If you do some traveling, you're going out of town, you're not spending time looking up addresses, and they're already in there. If there happens to be an opponent that you have that is not in there, in the bottom left-hand corner, it has I can't find an opponent I'm looking for. Click on that, enter the name of the school. You're not going to be able to get that immediately. What Arbiter has done over the last 6 months is really did a good job of merging multiple entries. When they first started the software program, like the old days of ScheduleStar, everybody could put in a school name. And so what you had, for example, somebody had entered Archbishop Moeller. Somebody else had entered Moeller High School. What they've spent a lot of time doing over the last 6 months is merging those so there's only single accounts, and now they got it worked out that if they need somebody added, Arbiter actually adds them. So it just trying to minimize duplications is what they're trying to do there. So ultimately, you want to take time creating your list of opponents. And the reason why you want to do that, and we're going to go to this next, in the aspects of creating events. And if the opponent isn't in there, you got to go back, add them, and then go back to the game. So I really encourage you to take the time to work on those three pieces. Get your sites set up the way you want them set up, get your team set up the way you want them set up, and then get your opponents set up the way you want them set up. You can't add too many opponents. Doesn't hurt the system keeping them in there. Any questions with those three components? And kind of my belief with the technology, what I'm trying to do is kind of show you the structure. With any technology, the more you use it, the more you mess with it, the better you'll get at it. What I'm trying to do is just show you kind of little tricks of the trade. So, but anytime you have questions, just stop me. Okay, so now we go back to, on the left, schedule. Now we're going to talk about adding events to your dashboard. Now, one of the things that needs to become a discussion topic for your group within your conference. In an ideal world, you know, if you think back to when ScheduleStar first became web-based, for those that were old like Tom and I and were around at that period, one of the things that was intended is, in theory, the logic behind this technology with it being intertwined is I should only have to put in my home events. And if everybody puts in their home events, my schedule is going to populate. Well, the problem that we run into, and ScheduleStar ran through the exact same problem when they tried to do that as well, goes back to what I said at the beginning of, this software is only as good as your weakest link. You know, at the end of the day, I'm an OCD guy. So I'm going to have my 2018 football schedule in probably by this October. I already have 17 in there. But there might be an AD, I always pick on him. He's a friend and I like to pick on him. Mike Delfina's not going to have this year's schedule in probably until August 27th. You know, for those that know Mike. I don't have time to wait for Mike. It's kind of the way I look at this. So what you guys have to decide is within the league matches is, are you guys going to do, we're going to enter all of our schedules, or we're only going to do our home events? That's a discussion you guys need to have. If you go in the direction of only entering your home events, you need to have a discussion then as a group of, we need to have a deadline where everybody has to have their information in. Because again, as the OCD guy, I don't, you know, my parents look at my website, they look at the schedules. I can't have 14 soccer games in there, missing 2 because Mike Delafina didn't put in my soccer game with Springfield. I can't do that. So if the decision is you're going to do home only, I would recommend you put a deadline that everybody has to have it done by. And then Josh, you get to enforce it. I can tell you GMC, we decided we're gonna put in everything. By putting in everything, that does create some headaches. It does open up the potential for some double entries. So what I'm gonna do is show you some ways that we've combated eliminating the double entry. One of the things that you can do on your dashboard is over on the left side, the first thing you can see is the calendar. Obviously, by clicking on a date, you can look at events just from that date. One of the nice pieces that this has, it has a filtering system. Now, the negative side of the filtering system is you'll set your filters, and that damn thing will circle, that timer thing will keep going in circles, and it's slower than I want it to be. The more people that are on it, it slows it down even more. But ultimately, I can, when I'm setting down to, let's say, put in my soccer schedule, the first thing I do is I go to, I filter out boys soccer, and then I even filter it out further by saying boys varsity soccer. So again, this is when I'm going to be finished up with 2017 soccer schedule probably by middle of October, end of October. So I'm going to start entering it probably the end of October. So when I'm ready to enter it in the computer, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to filter it out with boys varsity soccer. So the nice thing is, and I'll set it for the next year. So the first thing that I'll do is I will go through and I will see what's already scheduled. You know, if I'm playing Walnut Hills and Tom got ahead of the game and he already has our game in there, what I can do, I can take my game with Walnut Hills, I can click this box, I can come up to actions, and I can accept the contract. That's one less game I have to enter. Okay? So you filter it out, you see what's already in there, and then you only have to enter the rest. So if everybody is going through and filtering, and they're seeing what's already in there, and they're only then filling in the rest, there should never be a duplication. Okay?
What does that look like when you fill in the rest?
Well, what I'm saying, well, so, let me see, I don't know that I have anything in there for next year yet. Yeah, I don't have anything for next year. Ultimately, what can I do with that?
I mean, I can wait.
No, I can, because it's a good question.
Okay.
There might be some baseball in there. So again, spinning wheels drive me crazy. All right, so I don't even have any baseball games in there. What sport might All right, well, here's a good example. Okay, so I set it for next school year. And so for next school year, there's one event in here that Oak Hills has obviously gotten ahead of the game with. Okay, so if I'm sitting down and I'm trying to put in my football schedule for next year, the first thing I do is filter out boys varsity football. This game would come up. Okay, so I can click here. You know, obviously the contract's red, which means I haven't accepted it yet. I can click here. I can accept the contract. It's a new game, so I can accept it. So now I've accepted that game. Now what I would do, so now that I've accepted that game, I would then turn around and take my list of my other 9 games and put those 9 games in. rather than putting all 10 in. One was already in there, I didn't have to put it in there.
Right.
So by filtering it out, you filter it out before you enter, because you don't want to double enter. I made the mistake the first time I used this, I put in my 16 boys soccer games, but it turns out there were 4 already in there. So now I got duplicate entries, and I have to go back and I have to delete games. Now, here are some of the things to be aware of. Well, go ahead.
Well, doesn't that give you that message that there's already something scheduled at this time?
It does, and then you have to go back and delete it.
Okay.
It'll red flag you and give you the. I'm just one of those. I don't like wasting my time if I don't have to. So that's why I filter it out. I see what's already in there, accept what's in there, and focus on what's not. So that's the nice piece of the filtering piece. Okay. This is another spot where it becomes so critical for everybody to have the initial setup. Okay? Let's say, just keep picking on Tom. Tom puts in a game at Purcell, a football game at Purcell. But PJ hadn't set up his assigner yet. So that game's going to be in the system. PJ's assigner won't see the game. So now PJ has to accept the game. They won't let him do anything with the assignments because it's not his home game. And now PJ has to go in and edit the event. But if PJ has his team set up right, if Tom puts in a game against him, it's all set up right, it's done. So that's the powerful piece. It's very easy if everybody is set up correctly. There are some ulcers if everybody's not. Does that make sense? Okay. So first thing you do, you go through, sit down with one schedule, filter out what's already in there. So you see now, for me, I have one football game in there, so I'm sitting down, I'm going to do my football games, I got 9 to enter. So then I'm going to come over here to add new. When you do add new, you have 5 choices. You can do a new game, which is obviously a head-to-head game. New practice I don't use, but if you're going to use this for scheduling practices, that's where you would do that. A new meet, cross-country meet, track meet, something where multiple teams are playing at the same time. A new tournament, a bunch of head-to-head competitions within a tournament. It's kind of the way I've broken it down. And for whatever reason, some other event. If you want to use this to put in your prom or your homecoming or whatever it might be. So new game. At the top, you have an optional field to fill in. If it's I use this for homecoming football game, or if I'm running an invitational, a Coda West track meet, whatever name you want to put in there. So, and again, this is why it's important you set up your teams right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to do archery so I don't mess anything up. Boys varsity archery, okay? Then I'm going to select my opponent. And I think I've been picking on Lakota East. So I put it up. So here's two perfect explanations of why it's important to set up your teams first and also your opponents. Because if you haven't set up your teams first, when you go to schedule boys varsity archery, if you haven't set up that team yet, none of that information will be in there and you're going to have to go back and redo it. And the same thing with your opponents. If you don't have the opponent that you're trying to schedule with that event, you're going to close out this screen, you're going to go back to opponents, you're going to add that opponent, and you're going to come back to this screen. Okay? So here's the nice part. By me setting up boys varsity archery as a team already, it already defaults the site of the match, the sub-site of the match, so we do archery on the tennis courts because arrows go through the fencing. You pick your start date, it'll put in your start time that you defaulted, but you can change the time if it's a special date. Normally the duration, for archery we set it up as 1 hour, basketball I think I had set up for 1.5 hours. Whatever your default duration is, it'll automatically be filled. You can change that simply by clicking on the arrow. Published game, its default is set as yes. What published game means, if you're aware, Arbiter has 4 components. Okay, it has Arbiter game, which is what we're using. It has Arbiter 1, which is what the assigners use. Arbiter pay, which I think everybody's going to get to. And then it has what they call Arbiter Live. Arbiter Live is the public portal that a parent can go to and pull up your schedules. Okay, so by having publish marked yes, whatever you're about to schedule is going to go on to Arbiter Live. So